thank you for being here.
No, thank you, Simon, for inviting me.
It's been, I'm just trying to think before how long ago it was we started talking about this, like thinking about coming in and me having a chat to you about running. It's been a while.
It definitely has, yeah.
Maybe 12 months, maybe 18 months. I can't remember how long ago it was when I first came to see
you. Yeah, I reckon close to, year and a half when you came in with one of your injuries and we had a good chat and No, I've been looking forward to it since though.
Yeah, and I realised when we were having that chat, I just thought you're a really interesting guy because you understand so much from the physio side of how to recover, but also then, I didn't know when I started talking to you that you're also really into running, marathon running, and of course the ultra marathon as well. Yeah. And I just thought, this is really interesting. I thought lots of people could benefit from having a chat with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So good. Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Also, this is the first time I've been able to use this studio. So I've been thinking about trying to get into a studio myself for quite a while now. And this is the first opportunity that I've had to be able to record here as well. So I'm really excited about it. So thank you for being my first.
Yeah, and I feel privileged to be here. It's great, Simon.
First of many, first of hundreds, hopefully. So today what I thought maybe we could have a good chat about marathon running and ultra marathon running. Of course, I know you've done a number of marathons and of course the one ultra marathon as well. Yeah. And I thought it'd be really great to understand more from someone who's very experienced like yourself. How do you actually get into sort of running and then how do you prepare for a marathon? I don't know how you prepare. We'll talk through that. What do you do actually on the day? How do you actually sort of prepare yourself mentally, physically, and what happens when you start hitting the wall or you're really struggling? Then of course, how do you recover? Yeah. So I thought it'd be great to start talking through some of those things. But what was it originally that started attracting you into running? Why did you start?
Okay, well, for me, as a youngster, I ran quite a lot, and I was part of one of the local clubs here, Basingstoke and Midhants, and did kind of middle distance running, kind of on the track, so I was always a keen runner, but then went to study university, and I kind of lost track of that a little bit. I didn't maintain kind of the fitness that I had before uni. And I remember coming home after university, moving back to Basingstoke, went for a couple of runs, and it was a real struggle actually. Just running a couple of miles was an effort. I wasn't fit at all. That kind of motivated me. I was like, right, I need to get back into this because that's always been one of my strong points. Is actually my fitness, even when doing other sports like football. Fitness and running was a big part of that. So I got back into it, started running fairly regularly, but without any real plan. I was going out, just running when I could, and just gradually building it up. And then with my work, the work that I do, sports therapy, started to meet more individuals who do running, do triathlons and ultra marathons and things. And just realised, that's where I want to go. I want to start doing more and more. And so I started, I guess, originally kind of training for like a half marathon, the Reading half, in fact. So started training for that. And but most of my runs really were kind of just going out as fast as I could. No real kind of plan for it. It was just kind of running by feel. And and then I did the Reading half with a few friends and it went fairly well, and I thought, okay, well, I need to do some more, and signed up for the Basingstoke half, which is another local event, but without realising this was quite a hilly course, and I probably got a bit cocky from the Reading half, which is a bit flatter.
It's very flat. I remember doing Reading years ago, and it is a very flat. It's where I've had one of my better times. It is a flat one.
Yeah, definitely, and a lot of people use it as a kind of a training event for like the London Marathon. So it's a big event. It's and you get good support. So it's definitely a good one to do. So I then like I say, I signed up for that Basingstoke one, which was the Reading was in March, I think, and then Basingstoke was in October. And it was a really hot day, kind of late 20s. Bearing in mind it was October, it was really hot. Just didn't expect it, and I just did probably what I did at Reading, just went for it right from the off, and completely kind of blew apart really. Just struggled on the hills, the heat, so it was a tough tough run and started cramping and in all my legs, in the quads, calves, hamstrings. So yeah, it wasn't good. But once again, from that, from each race, you just take something, and I feel you learn. And I learned that I need to prepare better for these events if I'm going to keep them going.
Did you do much preparation for those other halves?
Not really, not initially. I mean, I kind of touched on it. I used to play a bit of football, and so I was still playing football at the time. And I remember before Basingstoke, I actually played football the day before, 11-a-side match, and that was a hot day as well. So I'd played football. That evening, I felt as if I drank enough, got enough fluid in to recover. But I was probably starting off dehydrated for the event on the Sunday. And
so you played a full 11-a-side game?
11-a-side.
So 90 minutes?
90 minutes.
Because that's not like just going for a normal run, because you're playing. That's really physical.
Yeah, start, stop. You're sprinting.
God.
So I played a full 90 the day before, and then went and did the half marathon on the Sunday. So I was already starting off fatigued, really.
Of course you were, yeah.
And dehydrated because of the heat. It was so hot that weekend.
So did you manage to finish the Basingstoke?
Yeah, I finished it.
Did you run the whole thing?
Most of it. Like I say, when I got cramp, I've touched on I got cramp. Yeah. And so I actually kind of stopped to try and stretch out the muscles. But actually I found when I stopped to stretch, actually my muscles started cramping up even more. So I was like, okay, no, I need to just keep moving. That's the key. When you do cramp, actually, it's better to try and keep moving through it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, definitely. So that's what I did. I then got back running, and even though my muscles were fatigued and they were still kind of cramping a bit, I could carry on running, and I got to the end. But Reading, I think I did in 1 hour 48 for my first half. But this Basingstoke one was just over 2 hours, so it was slower than the Reading one. And that's probably my slowest half to date, actually, that one. But like I say, I learnt a lot from that event, and that's when I decided, okay, I need to prepare a lot better for doing these, and it's just gone from there, really.
What did it teach you about preparation that you've been able to take from that experience, which obviously was quite difficult? Yeah. But then now you've been able to prepare better. So what sort of lessons did that teach you?
Yeah, well, so I just learned I need to fuel better the day before. I can't play football the day before. That's just not a good idea. So I think after that I didn't really, if I was going to have a football match, I wouldn't organise a run for the next day. But yeah, definitely kind of nutrition, so fueling right, drinking enough water, getting electrolytes in, and just having a good kind of breakfast as well before the runs. But all of these things I'd kind of learned at uni. I knew it, but I wasn't really putting it into practice. And but that obviously made me realise I need to follow what I've learned and just go for it. And I think, and like I say, with each run though, because everyone is different. You work out what works for you. But I definitely learned from that preparation is key. And if I'm going to keep doing them and want to improve, then I need to get the nutrition and also recovery. Obviously, I'd played the football and I probably hadn't recovered right that evening. Probably hadn't done enough stretching, hadn't drank enough, even though I felt I had done. You've got to take on more than you realise. So I learnt a lot from that, and then from there even though I'd had a really bad run, I think I then thought, well, I want to do a full marathon, actually, Isn't
that interesting? That you've had a bad experience, but your ambition is still taking you to the next level.
Yeah.
I want to run a marathon.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's just the way I am, really. Rather than use it to be like, I'm not sure running's for me. It was only my second half. Actually, I just thought, no, I know I can do better. And I wanted that next challenge, really. I mean, sometimes it takes a couple of days. Like initially, I might have been thinking, never again kind of thing. But then after 2-3 days, you start to think, okay, well, what's next? What event do I want to do? And I think it was the following year, I signed up for my first full marathon, which was the Paris Marathon.
Okay.
And so Paris was an event. It kind of appealed to me. I kind of liked the idea of doing a marathon, a way of seeing like somewhere different as well. Signed up for Paris. Got my best mate involved as well, so he signed up so we could kind of motivate each other with training. That's always a good thing. We kind of that would have been in the April or May of that following year. Started to kind of, that's when I probably started coming up with a bit more of a plan, like a proper training plan.
What did that look like? So when you prepared, you had the Basingstoke experience. Basingstoke to Paris is quite a big jump.
Yeah.
But you had the Basingstoke experience, which wasn't so great just because of preparation. What was different then about preparing to run in Paris? And then you had probably a bit longer to really think about it and put together some sort of plan and a bit of a strategy. What was the difference? What did you do different?
Yeah, well, so I probably gave myself like a 3 or 4 month plan of running, aimed at that kind of distance, so trying to build up gradually to it rather than previously I might have done like a 5 or 6 miler or like a 10k and then jump to kind of 8 to 10 miles, whereas actually you've got to try and build it up gradually, otherwise there's a bit more risk of getting injured. So that's where I kind of gave myself longer to build up for the marathon. And then also you've got to think about a bit of travel that comes into it when you're going abroad, though Paris isn't too bad. We went by train, so it was quite simple. But then you're staying in a hotel, which is a bit different, so your preparation at home is obviously different to when you're staying in a hotel, and making sure. Even at that point with Paris, it still wasn't perfect, my prep. That came a lot further down the line. I was a bit better organised with that, and like I say, I had a training plan in place.
And in that training plan, because I often think it's a few things, but one of the biggest things when I started running marathons, it was about just getting used to time on my feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you did something similar. So for me, it was just, okay, like some days you go out and right, okay, comfortable running for an hour. Obviously, if you get closer to 2 hours, then that's more like a half.
Yeah.
And then you've got to kind of mentally then think, I've got to do that again. And actually, it's going to be again in a bit to get there, because you're probably going to look at, I don't know, what sort of time marathons are you thinking, or have you been running?
What, recently or for?
Well, what was that first time in Paris compared to?
So that first one in Paris was a 3 hours 48 actually.
Wow, I mean that's
that's
incredibly fast.
Yes.
Anything sub 4 is very fast.
Yes.
I mean, God, my first marathon was 5.5. About that, it was a hot day in London.
Yeah, so it was a good time, and that because I had done a bit of a plan. So I was pleased with that. But to be honest with you, I kind of went off quite quick, so I would have been on for a much quicker time, but a lot of people say that last kind of 10k of a marathon or last 6 miles, it was a real battle kind of through it. There was some walking. I wasn't able to run the whole way, so I obviously went off like way too quick.
But also you can't train for that last part either, because quite often, I think in any training plan I've ever read about, they don't recommend you run a marathon before running a marathon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, how far had you run up until that point?
So I did up to 20 miles. Yeah. Okay. So you've still got that last 6 miles, that last 10k, majority of programs you will see for a marathon is they don't recommend going up to the full distance. As I've done a few more marathons, I build up a bit closer to the distance. So I'd be more like 22, 23 miles. Still wouldn't do the full distance. Like you say, so you can't really kind of train for that last bit. But that's where, mentally, that's where it comes in. Because even the elite runners, when they do marathons, they're in pain. They're just good at hiding it. But they're in pain for that last bit, and it's just how you deal with that. which is what gets you to the end.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think that's an interesting subject, because of
Yeah.
course you've got your physical pain,
Yeah.
and mentally you're drained as well.
Yeah.
I don't know which you find is harder, or what you think is kind of the combination of, I mean, what's your strategy of getting through? You're 20 miles in, everything hurts.
Yeah.
How do you get through it?
Well, I think for me, so definitely for me, the struggle is more mental than physical, I think. So even though my legs feel tired, you know, my brain sometimes tells me that you start to play games with your mind, don't you? Think, oh, am I going to get to the end, or am I going to? Because even when you're running quite quickly, you see other people walking. So some of the quicker runners are walking when it gets to that stage, and you start to normalise kind of walking, like, oh, if that person's walking, I can do it. So there's that temptation. But what I've got better at is just having confidence in what you've done in training, like you've prepared for this. So that's what I constantly tell myself, like I don't need to walk. I've done the training. Just keep, even if you have to slow down a little bit, you just keep going, really. And that's how I kind of deal.
Like positive reaffirmations.
Affirmations. Yeah, definitely.
Because when I've done it as well, it's the mental side, which I actually agree with you very much. It's actually more mental than it is physical. Yeah. Because I think your body can get used to it in some respects. I know it's difficult, but then it's your mind, which you then got to play these mental games with.
Yeah.
I mean, what sort of things do you do to kind of keep your mind? Also, you talk about just trying to be positive. You can keep running and those sorts of things. Is there anything else that you can do at that point?
So what else do I do? It's all about being positive. I mean, I'm quite a positive person anyway, so I say as many positive things as possible. I don't really listen to music. Obviously, some people will listen to music, and when they get to that point, they might put on like a song that's a bit more upbeat, try and get them going again.
Do you listen to anything?
No, I don't actually.
That's interesting.
Yes.
No, I have to listen to something. So
okay.
So you just, if you just go out for a run on a Sunday, you don't listen to
very
anything?
very rarely. Sometimes. Sometimes I might listen to like a podcast.
You might listen to this back.
Yeah, exactly. Every now and again on a training run, I will listen to. More often than not, it is a podcast actually, rather than music. Because for me, when I'm out running, it's a good time to kind of just think, or even just take my mind off things, really. Because I find with when you're listening to music, depending on what the song comes on, you can end up if it's an upbeat song, running a bit quicker, or if it's a bit slower paced song, then you slow down naturally. I don't want that fluctuation in my pace, really. But for me, it's a way of kind of just either zoning out or just listening to something that I'm interested in. But never during a race would I listen to kind of music or anything.
That's interesting. You wouldn't listen to a podcast either. So you're really just focused.
Yeah, I'm focused on the event.
That's interesting. Do you find you can get into flow state when you're running? Is that kind of the state that you achieve?
Yeah.
And in that you want your mind to be completely clear.
Yeah. I just get into a rhythm. Yeah, it's kind of clear mind, and just kind of, because once you get into a rhythm, I always find the first 20, 30 minutes of a run, any distance really, it takes a bit of time for my breathing to get into that kind of rhythm. But once I get into that, it kind of feels quite comfortable, and I can kind of keep ticking over at that kind of pace. And it depends if I'm running even like at a really quick pace, like a 5K or a 10K. Once I've got into a certain pace, I tend to find I can maintain that. Until, with a marathon, you get to that near the end, and that's where it might change. But that's when, like I say, you might have to just maybe slow down slightly just to kind of keep yourself kind of going.
And are you, when your strategy when you're running, are you looking to be consistent on time? So as in run each mile at the same pace, or do you? So I know there's these different strategies, isn't there? Sometimes you run a bit quicker, then you taper off, or do you look for a consistent?
More often than not, I will look for consistency. Definitely,
right, okay.
Definitely. I mean, the best way of doing it is actually trying to start off slightly slower, And then even at marathon distance, but very rarely people do this, is actually like you want to try and get a negative split, which basically means you do the second half of the race quicker than the first half.
I've heard about this. I just don't think I'd ever achieve it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's so hard to do because at the beginning, obviously, you feel so good, you feel pretty comfortable. But most world records or the people that do great times, more often than not, it will be a negative split where they've done the second half quicker.
Wow, so that's real discipline to do the first. So you have to be really on point that first half to do it slightly slower to reserve the energy to do the second half faster.
Yeah, but it's a tough thing to do. And, you know, I haven't done it very often, only a couple of times, but if you can achieve that, that's a sign that you've done a really good run, because you've kind of got your pacing kind of on point, and that's how it should be, really. But yeah, most people and majority of runners will go out feeling good, run pretty quick, and then you're kind of digging in near the end. But yeah, ideally that's not what you want to be doing.
No, that must be hard though, because you know, it's all the excitement at the beginning. You know, you've got the crowd and everyone's cheering, and especially if you're doing Paris or London or another big city, they've got a lot of people there. There's just the excitement about it.
Yeah.
I suppose it's if once you kind of start really wanting a time with everything else, that's kind of when you have to go, right, actually I've got to get my head in the game here to run in a certain way. Yeah.
And I've started to get better at doing that, definitely, the more races I've done. And it's just, you get more experience. The more races you do, you get more experience, and you get your pacing a bit better, definitely.
So that was Paris.
Yeah.
What happened next?
So after Paris, I think it would have been the Stockholm Marathon. So another one to kind of visit another city.
Oh, wow.
That was 4 minutes quicker, so 3 hours 44. Then I did New York, that was a great one. So the crowd in New York was absolutely amazing. The Americans just absolutely love it. So I remember going over some of the bridges, and you can literally hear the roar of the crowd from the other side of the bridge, and it just makes you want to run quicker because you can hear them cheering. So that was a good one. That was 3 hours 36, so got slightly quicker again. And
when you did the New York Marathon, I mean, what parts of New York were you running through? Because I can only imagine when I did London all those years ago, it was deep of people, like really deep, and 4 or 5 people deep, and I can only imagine in America it was just that times 10. With all the noise and actually when I ran the London Marathon those years ago, I didn't actually use headphones that day. Normally it's always, but the crowd was so loud. I was like, actually, I'm going to listen to the crowd. I imagine New York was kind of similar to that. Definitely.
That's another thing for not listening to the music, is taking in the crowd. When you hear your name getting cheered, whether you've got it on your T-shirt or nowadays they tend to have your name on your kind of bib number. If you hear your name being cheered, then it automatically perks you up a bit. That's another good thing in the last bit, when in a big event, when you hear your name being cheered, that does help when you're struggling. It does get you through it. So with New York, you kind of go through all the different districts, really. So you go through the Bronx, Harlem, Brooklyn. You go through all those different areas. It starts on Staten Island. So you actually have to get a coach out to the island. That was one that was really tough preparation-wise. Obviously,
you're also contending with a flight as well.
Yeah, so you're contending with the flight and change of kind of body clock. It was a really early start. You had to go on these coaches out to the Staten Island, and they said that they were going to lay on breakfast actually when you get there. And I just remember there's queues of all these coaches going. You're stuck in a queue, and then you're thinking, well, how are we going to get the breakfast? And when you get there, there were bagels, but literally they were just like plain bagels, nothing on them. So really dry, not ideal. And then they had some kind of like energy bars and things. But preparation food-wise before that wasn't particularly great. And then also it was quite a cold day. and then you get there early, you're waiting around, and it's just kind of chaos, to be honest. It's I don't know if it was the same for you at London in terms of amount of people, and you're waiting around.
There's so many people around, and everyone needs the toilet. And you're thinking we've got to run in 5 minutes or 6 minutes, and everyone needs the toilet. Everyone's a little bit nervous.
So it makes you need the toilet even more, and so it's always kind of chaotic before a marathon. And
so what's the ideal preparation? So because in this situation, we're talking about Paris, talking about New York. You've had to travel. You're staying overnight the night before. You're probably getting up early to then go and run.
Yeah.
What is the best sort of preparation and nutrition? Probably is what we're talking about, really. What's the best nutrition? Because no doubt on the day, then it's going to be slightly different to that. So ideally, what would you like to be eating that day?
Yeah. So ideally for me, because like I said earlier, it really is. It's individual. It's what works for you. So you've got to practice all these things before your long runs and find out what works for you and stick to it. Really, that's the key. Never change things on the day of a big event, because that's where a lot of people go wrong. Is they've done all their training runs, they've eaten certain things, and then on the day they just completely change it. I've been told to eat this and that, and they'll have that, and then it just doesn't agree with their body or their tummy. But yeah, so for me, I tend to either have some porridge, or I do have bagels, but with peanut butter on. I always drink kind of water in the morning, and then I might have a glass of orange juice as well. But yeah, you definitely want to have a decent breakfast and try and have it a couple of hours before the event, 2.5 hours before. And then for me, what I tend to have that last hour before, I will have like a banana as well. Just basically get your carbs in, and just so because you don't want to be completely full, and that's why you want to eat it a couple of hours before. But yeah, you need that energy for starting the race.
What about the day before? And you mentioned before when you were doing that half before, you've got to try and get it right the day before. Are you changing your nutrition anyway the day before? Extra carbs or?
So I wouldn't go crazy like eating loads of carbs, like stuffing in loads of pasta and rice. That's what some people do. But yeah, I would definitely make sure I'm well hydrated, drinking plenty of water. That's the key time, is the day before, getting your water in. Because if you try and do it the morning, just have loads of water, then you're just going to end up kind of like you've said earlier, needing the toilet. It's just all going to come out. So you're better off the day before having sips of water throughout the day, keep it coming in, and so you're well hydrated. And in terms of like what they call like the carbo loading, I would just I would actually say, if you're going to have a big meal like that, have it. Say the race is on a Sunday, I'd have it the Friday night. Actually have that, because that will still stay in your system for the day. But I tend to, the night before, for me, what works is I tend to have a spaghetti bolognese. That works well. But yeah, kind of a fairly plain kind of pasta dish, sometimes a carbonara or something, that works for me. But like I say, yeah, just don't change what your normal. If you've done some good training, you've done your good runs, try not to change it on the day or the night before, because that's when things can start to go wrong. And it's the same with kit as well. If you've trained with certain kit throughout your training, like certain trainers, don't be tempted to change or buy new trainers for the actual day, because then you might end up getting blisters, or you haven't worn them in. So that's definitely, you've got to stick to what you've trained with and done well with, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got to, it's like you said, it's all the things that you've been training with, it's just keeping it the same.
Yeah.
And I suppose there might be an instinct to think, oh, this is the special day, I'm going to use the special trainers, oh, actually, I'm really looking forward to that, I'm going to have this different breakfast. But of course, it is about actually keeping everything as simple as possible, and everything is similar to all your rubber running days. It's interesting actually talking to you, because I think our approaches are actually quite different, because I can't eat anything. And immediately, as soon as I do, maybe I can get away with a banana or two, but it has to almost be, my stomach has to be empty. But then later on, it's just during the race. It's not even a race for me because I just plod along because I just enjoy the run. But you're running so much quicker. But then it's, during the run is then when I'm thinking I need some nutrition, need some fuel to help me through.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Do you use anything during?
Yeah. So during the longer distances, I would have like energy gels or kind of like little cubes, like shot blocks that you can have. It's kind of like a sweet, but it's got a bit of carb in. Have some of those sometimes. But mainly, if I'm doing a marathon, I would have maybe 4 gels. Okay. And I've worked out for me, if I have anything over 4, then that's tend to be when my tummy starts to feel a bit funny.
Because it's just glucose, I imagine it. So it's just sugar pretty much going straight into your system.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you must space them out at specific times?
I try and do it every kind of 45 to 50 minutes. But I wouldn't even say I've mastered that at the moment. That's what works for me. But I do, throughout my training, I am constantly trying to find out what works optimally for me. And I do sometimes change it. But if I'm going to try things, I always do it in a training run. So if it goes wrong, then at least it's in training rather than on the day. I would tend to have 4 gels, and sometimes maybe near the end I might have a caffeine gel as well.
I was just about to ask you about that. See if that's something that also sort of perks you up a bit or gives you that extra bit of energy. It's obviously a different type of energy, maybe. Yeah,
but I've definitely found that helps near the end. Just gives you that a bit of alertness when you need it. And also with kind of nutrition whilst all the gels when you are doing events is don't wait until you really need it. You need to be having these, even when you feel I don't necessarily need it, but that's when you need to have it. Because if you get to the point where you're kind of desperate, because that's happened in the past, probably that Basingstoke run actually, where there were kind of kids handing out jelly babies and you're just reaching out for everything because you're just like, I need energy. But at that point, it's probably too late really to get the boost from it. You need to be having these before you get to that point.
That's interesting. So actually you should be kind of planning, like you said, 45-minute bits, but in that first 45 minutes, you probably don't really feel like you need anything. But what you're suggesting is that actually you need to keep yourself, I think it's your glycogen levels, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So you need to keep that topped up so you don't kind of just hit empty.
Yeah,
exactly. Because then you're never going to get back to where you need to be. So it's interesting, actually, you should be planning it earlier.
Yeah, definitely. So, really, there's a lot of prep that goes into it. But going back to where you say, you struggle to run after having any breakfast, maybe that's what your body's adapted to. That's what you've got used to.
It might be. I struggle to digest. So if I have a big breakfast or I always have quite a small breakfast. So normally whenever I train fasted just because it's first thing in the morning. I think you're right. That's where my body's adapted. I don't think it's the same for everyone. But I'd certainly, because I used to normally get up, then get out and run straight away, and I do it just on a coffee or two. That's when I feel like I'm at my best. I'll probably have breakfast after. But of course, if you're doing an actual arranged marathon or ultra, then it's much later in the day. So then you're talking about, going out to run at maybe 10. And then for me, then you've got a 4 to 5 hour run. So you might not eat till, early afternoon. And by then you've burnt how many thousand calories? So exactly. It is a tricky one to get right, I think. And it's a very personal thing. So, I can advise on quite a lot of things, but actually that might not work for you. But you've just got to try it in your training and find out what works best. For you it might be a case where actually the day before you just eat a bit more, so you've got that fuel in you already for the early morning run, and then actually you just find whilst you're out running, like you say, you can just top yourself up with a bit of food whilst you're out. But some people will say, look, I just can't eat at all whilst I'm running. I just can't have anything. So they need to get their energy in kind of beforehand. So after New York, you had Stockholm?
So Stockholm was before New York, then New York.
Okay.
I've never done London. I'd really love to do London. And then I think it was Manchester, which up until this year, Manchester was my personal best. So I did 3:23. So I did quite a big jump from 3:36 to 3:23.
Wow, that is a big difference.
Yeah.
So why do you think there was a big difference there?
Once again, just better prep, better training. I'd learnt a bit from each of those marathons, and it just clicked. That day really clicked. I got to 20 miles and I felt exactly the same as I did at the beginning of the run. So I was still feeling good. Got to 20. I thought, blimey, okay, well, I've got 10k to go. Let's see if I can push on a bit, try and actually run a bit quicker. So I managed to do that for another 2 or 3 miles, got to 23, had increased the pace, not dramatically, but a little bit. And then it was only that last 2 or 3 that became a struggle rather than the kind of 10k. So I got quite a big PB there. And then like I say, this year I managed to do 3:21, or just over 3:21. So that's my most recent PB. But that was quite. I've had quite a few years gap between doing that actually. So there'd been some other events that I'd done, Edinburgh, and a couple of others where I hadn't quite got back to that level. But this year I trained really hard.
So what did that training consist of? So when because now we're talking about an optimal performance.
Yeah. So
that in the weeks and months leading up to it, how did you prepare?
So real simple technique really was I started to just do more mileage really. So went from maybe running 3-4 times a week. I increased that to 5 to 6. So less rest days. So obviously when you're starting to do that, there's a bit more chance of getting injuries because you're not having so much rest. But yeah, if you can start to do that and get that consistent running in, once again, training, it's all about consistency. So if you can start to run 5-6 times a week, your body just adapts to doing that. And so in the past, maybe where I've done 30 miles a week, 35 miles a week, I kind of got up to kind of the 50s. And I think my highest week was over 62 miles in a week, which is a lot of mileage.
That's a lot of miles.
Yeah, when you're working and you've got a family and stuff, so it's hard, and that's it's getting that balance right as well. But that was I would say the biggest thing was getting in more mileage.
And what are those runs each day?
So they vary, and that's where again once the training's probably changed from what I used to do. So I would generally do a couple of kind of interval sessions during the week.
Okay, that's interesting because I was for some reason my mind was immediately going to you're running an hour, then an hour and a half, then 2 hours. But actually, there's probably some interval stuff in there as well. So, so you're doing different types of running each day.
Yeah, definitely. So that's also a big thing is varying the training that you're doing. So you've got to have some very easy runs. So literally, where you're just kind of plodding away. Really, you can chat. So if someone was with you, you'd be chatting away, not even really thinking about the run. And that's where majority of your training actually needs to be like that. Actually, but then I do intervals, so that could involve speed work, maybe a track session. So in Basingstoke, we've got the Downgrange Athletics track, which anyone can kind of use currently. So you can just turn up, and as long as there's no kind of training evenings going on. But yes, I might do intervals of kind of 800 meters or 400s, and then also some hill reps, getting hill reps in. That's quite a good kind of interval session where you might do like a minute uphill and then you jog down slowly or walk slowly and then you do another minute up, maybe do that 8 to 10 times. So that kind of training is important.
That feels like it's going to be the hardest.
Yeah,
to me.
Those are the tough sessions, but they're the ones that really help if you're going to make the difference if you're someone that wants to improve your time. That's what's going to help is those interval runs or the hill runs. definitely.
I suppose when you're looking at some of these marathons, do you approach them thinking today I'm after a certain time? Because if you are and you want to get surely you're gonna be more inclined to go, actually I know this is a flatter course, because
Yeah.
if you've got quite a hilly course, then that's obviously it's gonna be far more difficult to get anything as a PB from it.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think a lot of the events I have chosen is I've kind of looked at the route and thought, oh, okay, actually that's a good one for a personal best. So you have to definitely bear the route in mind when you choose it. But then at the same time, for me, actually, sometimes I find if it's completely flat, it's a bit more relentless because there's no real respite. You're running fast kind of throughout. Whereas actually with a hilly course, you've got the hills, but actually on the downhill, it means you can run quite quickly, but it's not actually taking so much energy out of you because your momentum just kind of takes you. So for me, I actually find like a slightly undulating course might actually help.
And mentally, would that be better for you almost as well, because you've got the variation? Because a lot of this is keeping your mind.
Yeah. Because it can get quite boring if it's just constantly, or if it's a route that's maybe 3 or 4 laps, you're just doing the same thing again and again. That can get quite boring. And So I tend to prefer routes that are like a big loop, rather than laps kind of thing. So. So there's lots. With running, there's lots of variables really, and it all depends what your goal is. I have had some events that I've gone and done, and actually I just want to go and enjoy it, or I might have someone that I want to run with and maybe help them get a good time, or it does kind of vary. And then obviously if we're going to talk about ultras slightly as well. It's kind of a different mentally for ultra marathons. It's not about pace at all or speed. It's more about, okay, I've got to find a tactic that's going to keep me going for the whole duration of the event, whether it's whether it's just over marathon distance, or if it's kind of like 100-miler. I've got clients of mine that do 100-mile races, which is a long way.
That's unbelievable. So let's talk about the jump between doing the marathons and then getting into ultra.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of distance have you done in the ultras, and then kind of how do you then get past the point of, you've done your 26 miles, then you think I might have another 10 miles to go? I mean, it's
kind of daunting thinking, because
it's scary to think about it.
Because more often than not, you get to the end of a marathon and you're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
So the thought of having to do more is, it's hard. But like I say, it's a completely different mindset with the ultras. You might find that you do like a run walk kind of tactic. So you might decide, okay, well I'm going to run for 10 minutes, then walk for 5. And some people do that right from the start. Others think, okay, well I'll get a certain distance under my belt, and then I'll start to do that kind of thing. You've just got to slow your pace right down. And once again, you feel so good at the beginning that the temptation is to run a lot quicker at the beginning. But if you do that, you're going to pay for it later on.
The pain's going to come.
Yeah.
The pain's coming no matter what if you're looking at that distance.
Yeah, exactly.
And I suppose maybe you are thinking about those last miles, because if you've done a marathon a number of times, like you've got that experience, you've got some great PBs, and now you're thinking actually today is about just during the duration. I think you maybe start with that mindset. So what strategy did you take?
So I did an ultra actually not long after the pandemic. I did an ultra distance. I actually ran from Salisbury to Christchurch, where just followed an actual path. And because I was training for Race to the King. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, Simon.
We talked about it before.
Yeah.
So, but the ultra you did on your own?
Yeah, so the ultra I did was on my own. So I was due to do Race to the King, and then due to the pandemic, it got cancelled. And because of the nature of my work as well, it's quite hands-on with people. I wasn't able to work for about 4 months. So I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to carry on with the plan that I wanted to do for Race to the King, carry on with the training. And so I carried on with that. And so that involved some days running, maybe on a Saturday running kind of 10 to 15 miles, and then the next day doing a similar distance or even further. So you're trying to do back-to-back kind of long runs, which I'd never really done before. So that's another thing, having to get the nutrition right again. And then once again, that's just taking enough fluid on board, getting the electrolytes back in to your body. But yeah, and also I would, during an ultra, I would kind of eat different things to when I do a marathon. So rather than just sticking to gels, I would have other things as well, actually, like kind of peanut butter sandwich or kind of wraps, like cheese wraps. So kind of taking those on board whilst I'm going, because otherwise if you just keep having gels, like you said earlier with the sugar content, your body just, it doesn't like it. So
yeah, I think again, when I've spoken to other ultra marathon runners and I've listened to some on podcasts, they've talked about, they've actually gone back to almost having like a just normal food throughout. I mean, if you do a marathon, I think you're right, you can get through on the gels. But then eventually it's like, well, actually you need real food now. And so on some of these bigger races, they have like little stations and you have like a sandwich or you have something else. Yeah. But it has to obviously be something reasonably digestible because you're going to go running straight away after.
Yeah. So and even like things like crisps can be like salt and vinegar crisps, getting that salt content back in.
Okay.
Kind of dried fruit.
It was just you. So did you take a backpack and
a little
lunchbox or something? Just imagine you leaving the house, going, I'm off to run 35 miles now.
Yeah, so I had like a camel pack on my back. I'd taken some food with me. I was quite lucky, so probably about 20 miles in, because I ran from Salisbury to Christchurch, Ringwood was on the way, and one of my friends lives in Ringwood, so I met him in like a Waitrose car park. And he kind of helped restock my water, give a bit of food for me, and also he ran part of the route towards the end with me, so that was quite helpful.
Okay.
Just when I was starting to kind of flag a bit.
How far was that marathon or the ultra marathon?
So that was 35 miles.
35.
Yeah.
So talk me through coming from the 26 to the 35, and once you've hit the 26 mark and you're thinking, right, I've got these other 9 or whatever to do, like what are you thinking about those miles? How do you approach it?
Well, I think so beforehand it's a bit easier because mentally you've prepared yourself for going further. And I think that's a big thing when you're prepared to running a certain distance in your mind. You've got that, you've kind of got it set there. It's the same with like a training run. If you go out to run, say, kind of 10 miles, you might get to 10 and you think, okay, you might actually be able to run further, but you've got to 10 and you just want to kind of stop because you've got to the distance you wanted to. So for me, it wasn't too bad. I knew I was going to be going for that longer distance. I think, for me, it was just the hardest part, because I've always generally run for pace. Mentally it was harder to really slow myself down and not be concerned about running quickly. It was actually I'm not necessarily going for a time. It's more I just want to get this. I just need the achievement of doing the distance. But that's not an easy thing sometimes to do.
Also, all of your motivation is internal at this stage because it's something you wanted to do, but you don't have a crowd cheering you on. And I imagine you're not doing this one for charity. You're just out there because you wanted to have the personal challenge to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I had raised money for charity for the Race to the King, so that's another reason why I wanted to make sure I still did that kind of ultra distance, because I knew I had raised that money. I made sure that I still did that, and it was a great achievement. I definitely want to do some more kind of ultra distances. Then again, this year I've gone back to kind of like I did Manchester, and I've signed up again for next year. So there's still, at the moment, I don't think I've got the pace side of things out of my mind yet. But the ultras are definitely something I want to do more of.
So you're still thinking that with the marathons, you still want to create or get a better number?
Yeah, there's
time?
still.
Is it something that's niggling at you?
Yeah, there's still.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's sub 3 hours. I mean that's a real big ask, but I think I've got the potential to do that. So that's something that I've got in my head. So yeah, definitely looking towards that. But I think if I reached that, then I'd be happy and really concentrate on the longer distances. And I think I've mentioned to you before, I've also done a couple of triathlons, the 70.3 Ironman events. They're another kind of long distance event.
Okay.
And that involves like the swimming, the cycling.
I didn't realise. Of course, the Ironman one.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you're the Ironman, it's running, swimming.
Yeah, so you start off with a swim.
Okay.
Then you do the cycle, and then the running is what you finish off with. So for me, the running is generally my better of the three disciplines. But yeah, once again, that's a different ball game as well, because obviously you've got three different events. You have with the swim first of all. You've got that, and then the bike is normally the longer of the events. So the ones that I did, it's a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and then a half marathon. But the full distances, I haven't done one of these yet, but a full distance is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 on the bike, and then a full marathon to finish off.
How do you train for that? Because you're training three different disciplines, and that all of those distances are significant.
Yeah. So it's a big ask.
I mean, to swim 1.2 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, and then also it must change how you bike and how you run, because of course I guess you're wet. After running, I don't know if you have time to really kind of regroup properly, or
you say you have your transition kind of period, but you just from the swim you take your wetsuit off. You've normally got like a tri-suit underneath, but you just get your cycle shoes on and then jump on the bike and you dry whilst you're cycling. And then same basically when you get to the run, you just switch shoes from your cycle shoes to your running shoes and then go for the run really. But it's when you're cycling to then running, it's quite different, because your legs have been spinning quite quickly on the bike, and then when you start running, your legs kind of want to go a similar speed because they've been cycling quickly, but you just can't maintain that. So it's real. There's a bit of an art to try and slow yourself down back for the run. But for those events, in terms of fueling, you want to take most of your fuel on the bike, because it's easier then. You can be eating away or drinking all the time whilst you're cycling, whereas when you're running it's a little bit more tricky, and obviously you can't do it when you're swimming. So they're a different ball game as well.
God, I mean that just training for an Ironman like that. I mean, how do you break up your training? Because then you've got all these three different disciplines. They're all equally as hard. I don't know. Do you find one easier than the other, or?
So for me, like I say, the running is obviously the easiest part.
Because you've done it so many times.
Yeah, cycling, I'm pretty average at. I'd say I can be quite consistent, but the swimming was the one I had to really work on. And it also, a lot of them are open water, so you've got to get used to swimming kind of in a lake or in the sea. So that's different from swimming in a pool. There's a lot more to kind of think about.
It's not just the day; it's all the training that you need to do before that to get yourself in a fit enough position to be able to swim like that. I mean, is there an open water place that you've been training?
Yeah, so not far from here actually. There's the Reading Lakes. They've got a good kind of open water lake to swim in. There's a lot more actually around now. It's quite a big thing, the open water swimming. There's a couple, one at Yateley, Horseshoe Lakes, and there's another one, I think it's Mitchett Lake as well. So a lot more people are getting into the open water swimming. These events are growing all the time. Once again, the reason I decided to do one was one of my clients came in and did a full Ironman at Bolton which is the English Ironman, and that's one of the toughest actually to do. But he kind of inspired me to think, okay, I'd like to have a go at the Ironman distances.
What do you think motivates you to do this? Is it the challenge? Is it?
Yeah, I think definitely the challenge, trying something different. But yeah, definitely the challenge of trying to achieve something different definitely inspires me. I think that's just the way I am really. But yeah, in terms of, I think I'll get to a point where, well, we've already discussed with the marathons where, I will have done. There's right now, like I say, I've done about 7 or 8, and I don't see myself doing too many more. I want to do London. London's one that obviously you've done it, so you probably know how it feels doing that.
It's incredible, but I've only done one fully organised marathon, which was London, which was a long time ago now. I've done others, which is the same way you did your ultras, which was me off on my own. Yeah. I did a lot of those mainly during the COVID period because the gyms were closed, and I just started doing a lot of running during that period, and that's kind of when I really got. So I've done most of my running on my own. Okay. But it was the London, which I trained for. I think it was 2007, and that was for me that was just about ticking off the old life list of just I wanted to challenge, run a marathon. It was that kind of situation, and I did about 6 months training before. But I wouldn't say I was unfit. I played a lot of football before that, and I did some running and all those sorts of things. But I think. Then I did a lot of the hill running, just like you said. So I followed quite a regimented approach. But on the day I don't think you can prepare for it. But if you're not someone who's really naturally good at running, I was very slow at running at school. I was always sort of just plodded along. The actual day is so unbelievable and hard and brilliant and difficult.
Go through loads of different emotions.
Oh, yeah. And it just, for me, I mean, like I said, took about 5.5 hours, but it was a really hot day. And but I suppose the big thing was just the crowd. Mm-hmm. There were so many people. Everyone was shouting your name, and it's deep with just 4 or 5 people here, and it's the cheering on, and it's an amazing experience. Yeah. I'd recommend anyone to do at least one to tick it off your list. Yeah. It's just an achievement thing, I think, really, to really push yourself.
Yeah, and I think especially for London, obviously as a Brit as well, that. It wouldn't be any better, I don't think, getting to that finish line and where you've had all that support. Be a good feeling.
I think for someone who's never ran before, I mean, for anyone listening, if you've never ran before, this it's an exciting thing. It's an area to do it. I mean, obviously, if you've run lots before, then it's going to be exciting because you're on your own turf. Yeah. Possibly looking. London's a bit flatter as well, I'd imagine.
It is. Yeah.
So I imagine it's quite a quick.
Yeah. But then you've got the amount of people running it that balances out, because you might end up weaving in and out of lots of people. I don't think London's kind of, like if I was to do London, I'd go there to kind of enjoy it, take in the crowds, like you said.
So I think from a scenic perspective, I remember running over the bridge and just thinking, I can't believe I'm running over London Bridge. Yeah. And sometimes you're running through London just thinking, this is immense. Yeah. Just so that takes your breath away as well. Yeah. Actually, I have a funny story. When I went to do the marathon on the day, they said go. I had a phone call. It's my nan. She passed away now, bless her. But I always remember her, bless her. So I answered the phone. I put on speakerphone. She goes, "Oh, I just wanted to wish you good luck to run the marathon today." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Nan. I'm actually running it right now." And she was like, "Oh, are you?" I'm like, and I said, yeah. She goes, "Well, I'm watching the television. I can't see you." And I was like, "I promise I'm running it right." And I had all these people around me, and they all started cheering.
Amazing.
Like shouting, "Hello, Nan." Yeah. And I just thought, just always remember that, bless her, because she couldn't quite actually comprehend that I was actually running at that moment. Yeah. Because the marathon had already kicked off. But bless her. That was. But I definitely recommend to anyone to run a marathon. Yeah. For someone who's thinking about it, what would be your advice around training and preparing and on the day? Any advice you give to someone who's thinking about running it for the first time?
Yeah. Well, so in terms of if you're going to think about doing a marathon, what I would say is you've got to build up gradually to it. You can't just, if you're not a runner, just go and decide in 3 or 4 months I'm going to do a marathon. Well, that's not ideal. I mean, some people can do it, but I would recommend you need to try and do at least 2 or 3 halves before doing a marathon. Because if you do your running too quickly, you're just going to end up getting injured. Really, it's as simple as that. If you end up increasing your distance or your speed very quick, then that's when the niggles come in. It's important to really build up slowly. Have like a proper plan. Start off running 2-3 times a week. If you get comfortable doing that, that's when you can then start to maybe do 4 or 5 times. But you can't just jump to that kind of distance straight away.
How long do you think is an ideal time to prepare?
If I'm honest, I would say really, if you're starting from not being a runner at all to kind of a marathon, you're looking at a couple of years, to be honest.
Really? That long?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because and once again, it depends how you want to do it. If you want to go there and maybe kind of walk a lot of it, then you probably can do. But if you want to go there and be able to enjoy the experience, run round it, then you need to get a good amount of training in. Because otherwise, you might get round the marathon, but it's going to be really painful. And once again, there's more risk of injury if you don't do good preparation.
And do you see this a lot in your practice?
Definitely, yeah. So, for example, during the lockdown, there's a lot of people who started running for the first time because all we were allowed to do was really go outside, do our exercise, but otherwise
That's exactly why I started running again.
Yeah. So a lot of people started running, found out that they enjoyed it. It was really, positive for them, helped mentally, helped physically. But then just kind of get addicted to it, end up wanting to do more and more, seeing good results. Then just did too much running. And then, so a lot of people have had to come to see me because they've picked up injuries. And they can vary from kind of Achilles injuries to kind of knees, hips. Generally, they're kind of overuse where they've just done too much too quickly. And then once you've got a particular injury, you can definitely get over them, but potentially you've left like that little bit of a weakness in the body. So there's a potential to have that injury reoccurring. And that's another thing, as most runners, when we get an injury, we don't like really resting. So if you're told to kind of have rest from running for a week or two, they don't really like the idea of that. So the best way is definitely you start off running and just build up to it gradually. A general rule is increase your distance by maybe 10% a week. So no more than that. If you're doing kind of 3-4 milers, don't jump to then doing a 10 miler. And same if you're running half marathon distances, don't jump to then doing nearly like a marathon. You've got to really build up. That would be my general kind of recommendation, really.
And to keep yourself away from having to come and see something yourself, so keeping yourself out of injury, because we can talk about the injury that I started having calf injuries on both calves.
Yeah.
And actually, I think I came back to something really basic that I'd missed, was just having a gait analysis.
Yeah.
And then, using the correct shoes that were right for me, which I didn't even think. I mean, I know I did that in 2017 or 2007 when I did that marathon. But when I started running in COVID times, I just didn't even think. And then a year later, then I'm starting to have these really bad reoccurring injuries. Yeah. So what sort of measures can you take so therefore that doesn't happen? Because I've been on the wrong end of that. Yeah.
Well, like you've just said, in terms of trainers, that's quite an important thing. So, go to a running shop and have your gait looked at. Let them look at your running style. They can recommend a pair of shoes for you, whether you need a neutral shoe or whether you need a more supportive one, but they'll be able to tell you. So that's definitely a recommendation, because if you're running in a pair of like old trainers, you're more at risk to get injuries.
I'd actually say that's probably my number one recommendation.
Yeah.
I know there's a friend of mine that started to do some running. He's actually going to come on the podcast as well and talk us through his training. And I said, the number one thing you've got to do is get a gait analysis. And he'd never heard of it before.
Yeah.
And I said, this is going to save you a lot of time,
Yeah.
a lot of injury in the future. I said, because the difference between a running shoe and a normal trainer is totally different.
Yeah.
It's, it's all about comfort and the natural way that your foot, is it called, I don't know.
So a lot of people overpronate.
Pronate, that's the word.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's worth getting that looked at, definitely. Obviously, people run differently, where they might be quite heavy-footed, or some people run more on their toes, which then puts more impact on the calves. So that's important, definitely, to get looked at when you're starting off.
I'm that one, by the way, which I found out from the gait
okay.
analysis, and also,
Which would explain why you get the calf trouble.
I run slightly more on my toes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that's impacted the calves.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned from coming to see you. You kind of fixing my calves, but also it's what they then said when I went in to have the gait analysis. That they said this is exactly how this is how you're running. So that if I'd done that before and earlier, it would have definitely saved.
Yeah. So that would have helped, definitely. But then also stretching, especially after. It's not so important beforehand, because that's a lot of people make that mistake, is they feel like they need to do lots of stretches before going out on a run. But actually the key time is actually afterwards, because that's when everything's fatigued. You're tired. So you need to kind of stretch out. They'll be really tight after a run. So that's when you want to, in the first half an hour afterwards, you want to have a good stretch, just help the muscles recover. That's also a key time to get your recovery food in, is that first half an hour after a run, or after any exercise, whatever it is you do, whether it's running, cycling, or just going to the gym. That initial half an hour is when you kick off the repair phase. So that's it, that's important. Because the quicker you recover, then, the quicker you can then go out and do your next bit of training. That's another mistake also a lot of first time kind of runners do, is they might end up running 2-3 days consecutively, and it's just too much for the body. So you need to have recovery days are important as well. If you are feeling a bit tired or your muscles are feeling sore, don't necessarily feel you have to go out. Actually give your body a chance to recover that extra day and then go for the run. Because if you just keep running through tightness and soreness, that's once again when you're likely to pick up an injury.
So after going for a run, what is the best sort of routine? So if you just ran a marathon, for example, what sort of routine are you going to go through to make sure you're fully stretched? And I hear a lot about sort of using ice baths or using that sort of, what sort of process would you be going through after?
Well, so if you're brave enough to have an ice bath, that definitely helps. I haven't done that myself too many times. I've done it, but I don't particularly like it.
If I'm just at home, I normally have peas, lots of peas.
Okay,
I put both legs on some peas.
Yeah, I've currently got these kind of air compression trousers that I put on afterwards. I've got them for my work as well, but so they're very good for 20-30 minutes. It kind of compresses the muscles, helps the recovery. It's like a self kind of massage kind of thing. I would definitely kind of endorse kind of active recovery. So if you've been for a long run, try and actually keep moving rather than actually go and just sit down or lie down. Everything's going to seize up. So actually do an active recovery, do a gentle walk, or even just spin your legs on a bike. But just keep things moving, because that will help get rid of the lactic acid. So a lot of the soreness and tightness that muscles get is lactic acid build up, and that's just kind of toxins in the body when your muscles are tired. So you need to try and help flush that out of your system, and that's where the active recovery helps. Drinking lots of water to help flush it out of the body. It's easy to think, I've done a great event, I'm going to have a few beers or going to have a nice alcoholic drink, but actually it's not going to help you. Water will help flush that out.
I suppose that's only going to make alcohol's going to dehydrate you,
Yeah,
So therefore, it's going to make your water retention. It's going to make it far worse in terms of recovery.
Exactly.
So then, in the next few days, you could be really in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
However, I'm sure many of us, I've done it.
Yeah.
I finished a long run and I've gone for a beer after.
Yeah. And you've done your hard training, you've done the event, and we're all entitled to something to help us. But in terms of optimal recovery, that's what you want is water, help flush out all the lactic. I kind of say about active recovery. So for me, I've got a dog, so I would take my dog out for a walk to help with my kind of active recovery. And like I mentioned earlier, trying to get some food in within that first half an hour. And if you don't feel hungry, because a lot of people do events, don't feel hungry afterwards.
No.
So as much as they're not that pleasant, maybe like a protein shake just to get that into your body.
That was my next question, really, which was what is the optimal thing to have after? So you're talking about protein, so you need the protein to repair, so like a protein shake or something else.
So you could have some eggs, some chicken, or like a turkey or chicken sandwich or something along those lines, or sometimes I have like an omelette, something like that, just to get that protein back in. But if I know I'm not going to have food available that quickly afterwards, sometimes I will take like a protein shake. So I've got that prepared in my bag, and I've picked up one of the water bottles that they give out, and then I just put that into my kind of shaker, and I'll have that quickly. And as much as it's not pleasant, at least I know I've got that in, and that's going to help with the recovery.
And then what would you do the next few days or the next week or so? In terms of, you mentioned active recovery.
So I would still be doing that kind of gentle walks. I might even start to do a couple of really easy runs, or as I mentioned, doing a cycle just to spin out your legs. Swimming can be quite good, going for a swim, because obviously there's less impact with swimming. It just helps with the body recovering, because otherwise if you just sit or lie, everything is going to seize up, it's going to feel worse. We all have that where like the next couple of days we're really achy, like going up and down stairs can be a real struggle. You just need to, obviously, like sports massage is key. That's something I provide. That's an important thing to help with recovery, because once again that helps kind of get rid of some of the lactic, and just helps soften up the muscles where they've got really tight. And just kind of regular kind of stretching as well, that can help. And it's key, but you've just don't be tempted to try, and because I know some people do like a marathon at the weekend, they've done it, and then the next weekend they're doing another half or a full marathon and expecting to kind of really go for it again, get a good time. But I mean, some people are lucky and can do it, but it's a tough thing to do. Your body is more tired than you realise. I would say after a marathon it takes about 3-4 weeks to kind of get it out of your system.
Really?
Yeah, so it takes longer than you realise. Unless you're a real regular marathon runner where you've done a lot of them, you need a decent amount of time to recover.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say? There's a few questions that we haven't sort of touched on yet,
Okay.
which I'd be interested to go through. So things like the wall.
Yeah.
So I know this was something I was petrified of before running a marathon.
Yeah.
And then I've had varying different experiences of whether it is a real thing or whether it's actually down to nutrition, or whether it's something you can just build up fitness and it doesn't exist. I don't know.
Yeah.
So what is the wall? And then is it a real thing?
Yeah. Well, it definitely kind of happens to people where you hit that point and it feels like you're hitting that wall and you just can't go on. But it's kind of a combination of things, really. It can be where you just haven't had the right nutrition, you haven't fueled right. So you get to that point where, you've just got no kind of energy left. And your body feels like it's shutting down. But actually, like we said, mentally, your body can do a lot more than you realise. So even when you get to that point, you can keep going, but your mind is telling you, oh no, I can't, I need to stop. But yeah, so it's more often than not that happens because you're kind of unprepared in some way, whether it's you haven't done the right distance. So you might have only done up to 16, 17 miles in training for a marathon when you need to do 26. So when you get to 20, it's much further than you've gone before. And so you get to that point and your body's just like, what's going on? I'm not used to doing this kind of distance. So that's another one, is just, you just haven't done enough kind of training. So it can be, it can be a mixture of things, really.
I suppose it's depending on your fitness level, and then it's depending on your nutrition. Yeah, because, throughout the times that I've run it, sometimes I found it's been there or it hasn't, and I've never really found any rhyme or reason. But I've also come back to some stuff where I understand you can only store so much glycogen in your body. So once you run, apparently after 3 hours, if you haven't fueled correctly, then you've run out of energy. Your body doesn't store anymore, so you have to bring something else in.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where we spoke about earlier, where you've got to be taking on.
You've got to have little bits.
Yeah, little bits as you're going and before you need it. And then that, if you do that, then you're more than you're more than likely to stop what they call the wall from coming on, because you've been adding that bit of energy into your body as you're going along.
There was a great quote by David Goggins, and he said, "When your mind is telling you to stop, you're only 40% done. So your body has still got a significant amount left in it for you to keep running.
Yeah.
But your mind is beginning to shut down and say, no, you can't go further."
Yeah.
And that's when I think it comes back to your original point, which you're saying, actually, most of this is mental. So it's more mental than it is physical.
Yeah, definitely. It is. Yeah, that's with running. That's one of the hardest bit. If you get your mind right, then you'll be fine. But yeah, there's times where it's kind of telling you otherwise.
And I think that's something that you train over time to be able to, like you said, if you're new to running or you want to start doing more running, it's about doing little bits.
Yeah.
And that, I think that 10%, that's a really good, just a simple takeaway, isn't it? Just to do 10% more than you've done previously or the next week.
Yeah.
Because then you're slowly growing it incrementally, which I think is probably the best way.
Yeah. And you just gain confidence. The more you run, you kind of get that confidence of what your body can do, how far you can run or what pace you can run at. And when you get that confidence, then you know you can do it. And that that's a big thing in running, because a lot of us do. Even top runners will get quite nervous before runs or events, and you think, oh, can I do this today? But I know when I've done my best runs, I've gone into it and I've been thinking, well, I know I've done the training. There's no negative thoughts at all. You've done all you need to do, and generally you'll have a good run then, because you've got the belief that in what you've done. So like you say, the mind is really key, really. So,
Last couple of questions, actually. One of them's around the mind. What do you think that during COVID, lots of people started running?
Yeah.
And the impact on mental health, if you're running, I've always found it's actually been incredibly positive.
Yeah.
So it's certainly been something that has helped me, in those times when you're kind of in the office, or for you, you're with your clients, and actually running just gives you a complete mental break, gives you a full break from media or whatever it is. If you want to go out and sort of run, do you think it has a positive impact? Can it, how much of an impact can it have? Yeah,
definitely. Well, I know for a lot of people, running is their real kind of like stress release, or whatever it is, whether it's from work or family or just whatever's going on, going out for a run can definitely benefit a lot. But that's why it's hard, because if you're doing running and you're loving it and it's going really well, when you then pick up like an injury and you can't do it, that's when it can really affect you again. And that's why all the things I've mentioned, are important, because it will help maintain you, keep that running going without getting the injuries, which is so key. But running is definitely a big plus in terms of mental health, definitely.
And for you, what is you mentioned that you're coming to the end of the number of marathons that you're going to do now.
Yeah.
What does the future hold in your running?
Yeah, so I think, for me, like I've mentioned, I'd like to do a few more kind of ultra distances. I'd also like to get back into the kind of Ironman, like triathlons. I've done 2 of the 70.3s, but I'd like to do a full distance. So yeah, that's definitely the way I'm kind of looking towards. But yeah, I mean, recently, about 18 months ago, I had a little boy. So at the moment, my kind of focus is on him and, spending, time with him. So that's a big thing for me. But yeah, definitely in the future, that's what I'm looking towards, is those kind of, I guess, more even longer kind of distance events. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Well, Seb, thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I think that's been really valuable for anyone who wants to go off and run a marathon, even prepare for an ultra one day. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Awesome. No, thank you, Simon. Thank you for inviting me, and I've really enjoyed it, and I hope it helps a lot of people.
Very good. Thank you.
Cheers.